All right. Hey, Aaron.
Well, I joined, but
You
you're the
joined. You made
JB.
it. Justin Borland made it. Okay, great. I think we are all here then. And we will be able to get started. Um, okay. We have a lot of questions. There is our actual host, uh, who's going to be behind the scenes, my producer, Jill. I'm Aurora, product marketing and the webinar host today, and I am joined by Aaron Shelmire, who is co-founder here at Abstract, but also our Chief Threat Research Officer, and Justin Borland, who is my second favorite Canadian after Rafi, and our Director of Threat Research. So, hi guys, thank you for coming today. I'm gonna just jump right in to the questions. And because I feel like the first thing we should talk about before we even get into the findings is to just make sure that everybody who's watching with us, who's maybe not a threat hunter, not had time to read the full report before joining, so starting at the very beginning, what is an initial access broker? How has that role evolved over the last few years? And how has that changed?
For sure. So within the cybercrime world, there's been a lot of specialization and there's a lot of money to be made or not to be made, at least, maybe even just advertised. So a lot of different actors have taken different pieces of the intrusion and started to specialize in that. So you have actors who are just selling malware, you have actors who are monetizing stolen credit cards, and you have actors who are monetizing stolen credentials. So the initial access brokers, they're typically selling the credentials that are gathered through other methods, whether that's phishing, whether that is compromising hosts. And usually what we see are actors that are mass compromising hosts across the internet, using those to gain access and gain access to those credentials, and then sell those credentials to other folks who may want to get into those computers. Now, within that ecosystem, and even in itself, certain credentials are worth different amounts. Your credentials to just a regular Gmail account or a Comcast account, not particularly valuable. However, access to a large corporation, that is very valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the report opens with an example where an initial access broker, they break in and then they go completely silent for 3 weeks. And then a totally separate ransomware group shows up and burns the place down. What does that tell us about how mature this ecosystem has become?
Well, the same way that security organizations have maturity, these threat actor groups actually have a very similar kind of maturity. And there are some threat actors who are just trying to break into the scene. They're out there. Maybe they have some things that work for them for gaining access and doing things like that. And then there are some more well-established threat actors with, reputations and credibility, and they're known quantities, and maybe they're a little bit more sophisticated, but they're also good at what they're doing and they've done it for a while. So they've got sort of that street cred that they can lean on to go and help sell this stuff, sell their wares, to people in the underground. And then you've got, some of these like A tier actors who don't really have to sell their wares. They can work directly, threat actor to threat actor, work directly with other criminal organizations to go and either cut out the middleman and sell that access to somebody else, or go and help someone else exploit that. So it's kind of interesting to see how much the market, really much is thriving because there are those different levels of threat actors, and it sort of speaks volumes to the demand and the economics of what's sort of going on under the hood here. The fact that there are people who can break in you know, can price things a little bit lower to get their foot in the door and get their name out there so that they can start to establish themselves as like a, build their reputation and their portfolio, for lack of a better term. So if the market didn't really demand these services, I don't think they'd be nearly as prevalent or tiered.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that got a lot of attention in the report was the price tag being so low in some cases. I think like an average found was like 2,200 bucks. There was even cheaper ones. Um, but what in the research or even other recent research has surprised you most on this topic?
Probably the time to exploit. So the time from seeing a CVE or even an indicator of a CVE to having it weaponized to mass scanning the internet to even starting to pop some shells on systems and exploit these. As AI becomes more prevalent, and the bad actors can use that to um, help build these exploits, help understand what's going on. Often, they don't need to go too much further than a description of what might be compromisable and then start working with their favorite AI friend to start exploiting that. So like the time to exploit is, I feel, a really big indicator of where some of this shift is going.
Yeah, the thing that surprised me the most was probably that I wasn't surprised, and that these same techniques that we've been dealing with since the mid 2000s, like 2005, 6, 7, 8, and the same ecosystem still exists. These actors are still sharing a lot of this stuff, often over message boards, often over smaller group chats and such. That's not changed, and we had that same uh, activity happening way back with Zeus and with Jabber, where people were talking and sharing information. We are still seeing malware used, and when they find a special set of credentials, they move that over to another console and then somebody uses it. So same thing that happened with Target, where the technician at Fazio's had that compromised laptop and had a Target credential, and then we moved that credential over, and that became the high value credential that was passed on to another actor while selling all of the other credentials. And we're still seeing the same set of activity occurring and being successful for over 20 years now.
Well, one other thing I did want to bring up is that it's kind of interesting that it's not just the commodity threat actors or the crimeware threat actors these days. Oftentimes, if nation states have a reason to really try and get into an environment and they see this pop up on the dark web or in forums or stuff like that, the path of least resistance, as long as they can get a foothold in there and start tearing around, often it's sort of expanded who could potentially buy this stuff and exploit it and use it.
That makes sense. There's a finding in here that I kind of kept coming back to that the top credential pair found across 30,000 compromised devices was user. And maybe that's from vendor defaults or spun up and forgotten test accounts, some templates that didn't get changed. But I think how how do you explain to a CISO that their organization isn't facing a sophisticated threat? It's really more like a hygiene problem.
I think it's not necessarily that they aren't facing a sophisticated threat, but more that they're facing both sophisticated threats and unsophisticated threats because the barrier to entry has, dropped so low in a lot of these circumstances. Um, Basic credentialed scanning uh, and testing for some of these types of passwords and stuff is going to end up finding a lot of these particular configuration issues, and it's not necessarily inherently costly either. but it does sort of require a bit of operational rigor to implement, to operationalize, to get your procedures around and everything like that. But the output from this hygiene issue should really be surfaced as an audit finding many times and used to prioritize some of these remediations. And then the other thing is, some of these assets aren't necessarily directly within the walled garden of some of these companies. Some of this you alluded to the Target incident. Some of this could be, third parties and third parties who are using this or reusing credentials or that type of thing. And you really have to make sure that you're able to do analysis and create detection mechanisms, not just for everything in your walled garden, but it sort of extends beyond that to a lot of your third party risk.
That makes sense. That makes sense. The the report documents a 5-day window between when access is purchased and then when the ransomware is was deployed. What does the SOC actually need to have in place to do something useful with that 5 days?
Yeah, I think everything that's old is new again, right? So it's not necessarily terribly sexy, but doing vulnerability and patch management and doing it really well and in a timely manner is going to end up, causing a lot of rewards for you and avoiding a lot of pain and heartache. Again, with the advancement of a lot of the AI fuzzing and being able to find more exploits and more vulnerabilities and making them exploitable and reliably exploitable more quickly is going to cause evolutions within this ecosystem. And so making sure that the teams are able to identify what needs to be patched, identify what's exposed, and then start your emergency patching without breaking production. Going and making that a paved path so that you're not scared when the next vulnerability drops or hits and you need to go and spin everybody up and figure out what you're doing. Making that something that's much more normalized is probably going to, give you a whole lot of benefits within a lot of your environment. Battle testing those processes and making sure that that's not only being used under duress is probably going to go a long way.
In addition to that, I find that most important to all of this is reducing your attack surface. So we're always going to have vulnerabilities, and with the speed with which those are being created and found today, and the tools that are available to folks today, narrowing the attack paths and where your attack surface is provides you with much better protection than trying to patch everything. Limiting the availability of the different services that you're serving and making available really narrows where actors can gain access and gain a foothold, and then narrowing the access that people have, especially with those single factor auth credentials, so that they have to hop through different choke points within your infrastructure really reduces the ability of an actor to be able to move or to cause impact. And then additionally, making it so that any of those more critical and sensitive system configuration changes require multi-factor authentication and require you to hop through some sort of other choke point allows you to see that. And then from there, you can monitor just those checkpoints to be able to see how those actors or how people are operating there. And alerting on those types of really kind of unique crown jewels for your organization allows you to see, okay, this release just went out on Monday instead of Tuesday, and you always cut releases on Tuesday, or you always are making infrastructure changes on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. If it happens at any other time, alerting very quickly at that point. That's that type of posture and that type of knowledge of your own infrastructure allows you to see things that no one else will be able to see, and those kind of administrative actions that are normal, you'll be able to detect rather than having to rely on some neat, sexy exploit or firewall to detect that.
The know thyself approach, right?
I
Uh,
suppose, yeah.
the other thing you bring up, which I just wanted to touch on, is, especially with some of those more privileged accounts, the blast radius on if you do lose positive control and knowing how far it can be used across the estate ends up, helping out a lot too.
Okay. And is this, I suppose a lot of this also applies when the window is a lot shorter, like within just an hour. Would there be anything else that you would want to mention specifically on like a to have in place for like very short windows?
Yeah, I mean baselines. Definitely understanding what's normal in your environment. Layering your defenses. A lot of the initial logins, you'd hope they'd get caught, but if they're not caught, then understanding where those behavioral deviations exist in your environment. It's the first time someone logs in and then they start going from nothing to doing all sorts of shady stuff. That type of sort of velocity detection goes a long way. In the larger environments, if you have the ability to go and create your own walled garden, using bastion hosts, using more focused choke points with more controls, especially when you're dealing with admin accounts and super admin accounts. Those definitely help. Uh, help with some of that. For some of the smaller tier organizations, ensuring you're doing maybe some of the basics well, right? Like getting audit delogging where you can, and detection rules, and making sure that you're testing them and that you actually know when they're going to fire and that you trust that they're going to fire, and that you're not just waiting for something to happen when bad things happen. The testing at a regular interval definitely goes a long way.
Mhm. So, a lot of the incidents that I've worked in the past, the speed was typically much faster than 5 days, and it was more like a hour or even less to 30 minutes or so. In these types of incidents, nearly none of the controls that were in place would be able to detect and then send and correlate that alert back to the security operations staff in a quick enough time that they'd be able to respond to the entire chain of events. So when things are moving that quickly, those choke points that we were talking about really become your protection between those compromised resources. The other kind of piece that was almost always present in those intrusions was people were creating new infrastructure, and it was new infrastructure that was stood up and allowed access for the whole entire uh, credential gallery and enabled actors to use and replay a credential that may have been captured from their email, but on this new resource that used single sign on and used that same set of identity management that the core resource is used. And because of that trust relationship between that new resource that was just stood up and the core infrastructure, the actors were able to move laterally. So creating those situations where those new resources aren't added to your production and kind of more like protected environments and enclaves really provides a large set of a large amount of control and protection from a lot of these larger incidents.
That makes sense. So, I mean, one thing that I'm hearing a lot is, get MFA, make sure you have that. But that's it's not a panacea, right? There's limitations to that as well, right? What what are some of the limitations of like just put MFA on everything, that will solve it.
Absolutely. So, in a previous role, about a third of the intrusions that we were seeing relied upon MFA fatigue attacks, where the actors would still gain access to these single factor authentication credentials, and there was multi-factor auth on it, but they would just continually hit those Microsoft pages until somebody said, yes, accept. With Okta, it's a little less of a concern. It's a little harder to get those push notifications and for you to respond to those. However, with Okta, there's still session cookies that are stolen and then hijacked. So those session cookies, while they might be short-lived, if you can get those and then the actors can use those to gain access, they don't need multi-factor auth anymore, and they've got that authenticated session from a browser. JB, yeah, I
Yeah,
think you've got a little more.
the folks who are stealing those session tokens and are writing these info stealers, they're wonderful at dumping creds for immediate use, right? Like that's why they write them and evolve. They're playing cat and mouse, and when things stop working because an identity provider has figured out what it looks like when a certain attack works, they're playing cat and mouse very actively to try and keep their business up to date so that they can continue selling creds and the creds get used and they can go and make money. The other
Yeah.
thing I will say is I'm a massive, massive fan of FIDO keys and certificates. Uh, love the UB keys, love hardware. It does protect against a lot of attacks. The physical attack and the coercion, obviously is still a problem in that kind of space, but it provides an interesting barrier to entry too, because often it becomes operation bother someone else. If you don't have to be the fastest guy to run away from the bear. You just can't be the slowest sometimes, and sometimes that makes it a little bit harder to have your organization focused on as a target.
And so far, I haven't seen anybody that's trying to use YubiKey replay attacks to gain access to things, but we'll see it soon enough.
It'll all great supply chain attacks, eventually happen. Your worst nightmares will manifest, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it hopefully keeps the riffraff out though.
Okay. I if you can answer this one quickly, because we only have so many minutes left, but I do want to at least ask if there was anything in our report or just in reporting in general on this topic that you would want to maybe push back on a little.
Um, just that, a lot of the incidents that occur may very well have been attributed or could have been attributed to initial access brokers. And sometimes the link just isn't made. It's not that it didn't happen. It's that there maybe wasn't a smoking gun that pointed to that. Maybe there wasn't logging to go and confirm or deny what actually occurred. And you don't really know how you lost positive control of a particular credential or resources or something like that. So it's kind of interesting to see. Um, the details are often omitted, often for legal and operational reasons, but sometimes it also takes a really large effort to properly attribute, intrusions like this, especially the more sophisticated ones, to an initial access broker instead of, say a single unit type of compromise.
Hard to attribute it back to the specific access broker often,
Yeah.
because oftentimes those credentials are shared so widely or compromised so many times that you end up having a lot of overlap and multiple points of entry.
That makes sense. Okay. Well, this will be the last question, but I think it's could be a good one. What are you watching heading into the rest of 2026? Not necessarily related to this specific topic, but could be, but like what's the next thing?
I think that, the SaaS attacks in general, that area is very much ripe for some disruption, both offensively and defensively. The other thing is, I wish we could go 2 weeks without seeing another supply chain compromise. But it's proving both increasingly difficult and increasingly costly to detect some of these supply chain compromises. And, a lot of people have been historically playing fast and loose with how some of this is sort of, uh, occurring in their environment.
Well, I think the question that I'll ask you is what's more important, being on the latest versions of packages and not having vulnerable software, or using the latest versions of packages and running the risk of having compromised resources? Now all of the supply chain attacks are really throwing that into stark relief. And as you end up pinning all of your packages and wading through that, you're kind of stuck on those older versions. And where's the trade-off made there? Um, Coming into the rest of the year, I suppose, and also just with these the more credential theft style attacks, we've seen the replay of OAuth tokens be used for almost 10 years now. It's like way back to the Clinton campaign and um, the compromises that were occurring there through Russian actors. And it's still not a well documented or well detected style of intrusion. Similarly, the use of not just supply chain for the packages that are being deployed into your more core infrastructure, but going over into the SaaS world, all of the applications that are able to be added to, say, your Slack instance or your G Suite instance or your Microsoft 365 instance provide a huge amount of attack surface and capability, and also an ability to kind of hide from detection. Typically, in most of the logs that we're seeing for these data sources, you only get a GUID, and there isn't that connection from the GUID to, is that malicious or is that actually legitimate? And it's so hard to tell the difference between those. And there's not strong detection methods that we can deploy for that at this point. So I kind of think that's where I'd love to see a lot more research.
All right. Well, we are basically at time now. I want to thank you both, Aaron and JP. And I also want to remind everybody who is watching that you can read this report in full on our website, abstract.security. The report is called Price to Move. And also that we have more things like if you are, a detection engineer, if you're a threat researcher, if you're a threat hunter, we have some more closed door things going on too. So please reach out to us and we love to get you involved in those things. And make sure that you sign up for our newsletters and subscribe, hit subscribe everywhere, and join us next time for our next webinar. Thank you all.
And so
Take care.